I remember the not so good old days where I used to eat Reaper in BA mirrors. It wasn't enjoyable. So very similarly to Super Poly, Ghost Reaper is only really playable if you have a lot of spare extra deck space, and the reason why that is the case is because you really want to have as many potential targets as possible to cover as much ground. Otherwise, it's just going to be a card that you can only really play in mirrors, and it won't really be that impactful. Like, you don't want to be main decking this card. It's only really good in the side deck. It's only playable in the main deck in tier 0 formats, like maybe the Spiral format, where hitting the double helix was an insta win, and you could argue that it could have been good in the BA format where you could also hit ABC Dragon Buster as well as Dante, but obviously these formats are kind of like really far in the past. So now in the current metagame that we just keep on getting, there's just way too much variety, making Ghost Reaper kind of not always good. However, is the card still playable, at least in the side deck in 2021? Well, I'm going to give you guys as many targets as possible and also my opinion at the very end. But before we get into anything, make sure you like and subscribe, and now let's jump right into it. Okay, so first of all, against Tri-Brigade, it's not too bad against the Ominous Omen. Your opponent loses up to 3 copies of the card, so the Revolt will no longer be a disruption, but the issue that I have with this is that can still be used as an extender, actually, to keep summoning your monsters, and then summon your Link monsters, search with Nerval and stuff. So in a way, it actually works a bit less efficiently than Ghost Bell, but the good thing about Ghost Reaper is that your opponent also cannot start summoning the Ominous Omen next turn with the follow-up effects of the Tri-Brigade monsters on the field. So at least it deals with one threat permanently, whereas Ghost Bell just deals with one revolt, so it's just like a 1-for-1 trade here. Against Prank Kids, it's really debatable whether you want to hit the Meow Meow or the Doodle Doo, and the reason why I'm saying that is because it not only depends on the other hand traps that you might maybe have in your hand, so if you can only take care of your opponent's effect in the graveyard for the Link summon of Meow Meow, well, you obviously want to hit the Meow Meow. You can just let him, Link summon, and then if your opponent has an extender, at least you can Reaper the Doodle Doo. I definitely do believe that the best card to Reaper is either Doodle Doo or Meow Meow. Now, Burning Abyss actually does kind of get crippled with this card, but it's not like before where if you lost Dante, you were completely screwed because the other cards in your extra deck weren't really doing anything. Because obviously, when you get Reapered for Dante, you don't just lose Dante, you also lose Beatrice. There's no way to make Beatrice without Dante. But the thing is, now that the deck has Cherubini and the ability to kind of Link climb, your opponent would still be able to not only kill you with, Link summoning, but also maybe potentially make Zeus and control the game from there, or just control the game with trap cards, so Reapering a Dante isn't necessarily the end of the game. Now, Sky Striker is actually a pretty interesting one. I feel like if you make your opponent lose 3 Kagaris, you're definitely a really good position. It's infinitely better than just letting your opponent make a Kagari, Ghost Belling, or Veiloring or Imperming the Kagari. That wouldn't really be super efficient. Your opponent didn't lose 3 copies of Kagari in one shot, and you temporarily dealt with your opponent's ability to recur back from the graveyard, whereas if you Reaper the Kagari, obviously, not only can your opponent never recur back from the graveyard, your opponent will have to rely on Shizuku. Speaking of Shizuku, you could also Reaper the Shizuku. So when your opponent goes normal summon Ray, you can Reaper right away, and then your opponent would have to chain into the, the Link monster that your opponent really doesn't want to lose, and then obviously you Reaper the exact opposite. Against Invoked, there are a couple of things you can Reaper. You could either Reaper the Merkaba or the Winda against the Shadal variant. Now, for Dragon Link, I actually think it's complete garbage. Like, if you hit the Romulus, they can still make Seal. If you hit Seal, they can still make Savage. And if you hit Savage, it's only like 1 interruption. So it just acts as kind of like almost a Veiler at this point, but even worse because your opponent didn't really have to commit anything yet. So instead of making the Savage, he's just gonna make like Chaos Ruler and get the advantage from there and make the Hot Red. So it's definitely pretty bad here. Against Salamangreat, I actually think it's really good. There are a lot of cards that you can hit in the Salamangreat deck, such as Veilings, Sunlight Wolf. You could argue maybe the bigger Link monsters like Access Code, Transcode, whatever, but I would kind of try to stay away from that. Same thing with like the Mirage Stalio. I do believe that Sunlight Wolf is probably the key component for Salamangreat, and without that card, the deck is pretty bad, honestly. If you resolve Ghost Reaper against Evil Twin, you immediately win the game on the spot. It's not even a debate. You're really going to be screwed. You need both of them to win. It's ass against Drytron, don't even try to think about it. Now, Adignister is really interesting. There are a couple of things to hit as well. You could either hit the Link 1 monster if you feel like your opponent might not have the extenders to keep playing from there. So if you kind of want to just, play it, really dangerously, go big or go home kind of strategy. If you really want to be like kind of safe, you could hold it for the Dark Templar, and obviously when you Reaper the Dark Templar, your opponent will not be able to get the super broken Soul Charge effect from the grave, so the big towers just really won't do anything, and your opponent's entire strategy is going to be quite crippled. It's unplayable for Orchist, well, against Orchist. Obviously, in Orchist it could be playable because it's a dark, but against Orchist it's just unusable because the Link monsters like Galatea, Longirsu, I think it's Longirsu, and the other Orchestrion, whatever, they can all shuffle back banished monsters into the deck. So if you Reaper whatever Dingirsu, they're just gonna get it back. If you Reaper Galatea, they're just gonna make Longirsu, put back Galatea, and then make Dingirsu and play from there. Yeah, it definitely doesn't work. Same logic for Thunder Dragon, assuming that Super Bolt would get banned one day. Thunder Dragon Fusion can just recycle back banished cards into the deck, so same logic, you can't play it against them. It's shockingly really bad against Virtual World because they have so much variety in their extra deck, a bunch of one-ofs. So there's like no real choke point that you can hit that is actually really good. Like if you Reaper the Crystal Wing, congratulations, it's just like a 1-for-1. It acts as a Veiler, but our goal right here is to try to figure out maybe if there's a hand shop that might be infinitely better than Veiler instead of just a hand shop that kind of does the same thing as something that we already have. Now against Sword Soul, it's not that bad, but it's also not that great. You can hit the Sword Soul level 8 Synchro, which is a pretty good card, so obviously not having to deal with that card is a good thing, but it's an inherent neg 1, and your opponent can just make Dragite if the material for it was Moye and still draw one card off of it, and have the negate for Dragite, so yeah, never mind, actually, it's a pretty bad card against Sword Soul. And overall, Ghost Reaper just isn't the blowout that it used to be. Honestly, this card is still worth having 3 copies of in your possession, just in case we randomly somehow manage to end up with like a tier 0 format or a deck that just completely dominates the metagame and that relies on maybe one specific card in your extra deck, just like Spiral Double Helix was in the Spiral strategy. But at the current moment, Ghost Reaper just isn't the kind of card I can see doing wonders in Yu-Gi-Oh! If you have any other thoughts or comments or whatever, please make sure you let me know in the comment section below, or let us all know rather. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys very soon. Peace.